And Irene, it's not Manners, it's Leonardo Manners. I think Ignatius gave his name incorrectly.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We can just rename. All our panelists, you have the right to rename yourself. You just right click next to your name and then you will get the option. You click on more and you rename yourself.
Well, I've done mine already.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't need that long title. Oh, one more thing, Irene. I think we got the times slightly mixed up. Leonardo should be getting the 15 minutes and the rest of the panelists 10 minutes each. Because he's doing the keynote.
Sorry about that, Henry. I was on the phone with my colleague. Sure. I missed what you said.
I was saying Leonardo as the keynote should be getting 15 minutes whilst the rest of the panelists get 10 minutes.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, it's just on the program, it's got the timings a little bit mixed up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But I'm sure we can just correct that when we do the...
Yeah, I'll just also have a conversation with our facilitator, Musidi. I'll just give her a call now so that she's aware of the time allocation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I've made everyone, I've made you co-host so that you can have rights to open your video. Are you able to open your video?
It still says that the host has stopped it. I see you've got William and Leonardo as co-hosts.
Oh, okay. I just made you a co-host as well.
My one is open, thanks.
There we go. Does that look...
Yes. It looks proper. Good morning, William. And can you also just open your video? We just want to see if the lighting is good. We will be streaming on various platforms.
Irene, I'm just going to open for a little while because I'm still driving to a point where I can stand, but I trust that it's okay.
No, not a problem. Then when you arrive to where you will be sitting for the session, then you can just open it up. I'll just give you a thumbs up on the chat box if it's good. Okay, I saw William's video. Can you open that again, William? Sorry about that. I just want to see how it pop up on my side. Can you say something? Let's test your audio.
Good morning to all.
Good morning. It looks great. Thank you so much. Lovely background.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are waiting for other panelists. We will give them 3 minutes to join in because at exactly 10 o'clock we need to go live. So I don't know if maybe we should call them, but I saw that Valerie was online this morning. She was on email. Is it a female or male, Henry? Sorry about that.
It's a lady. It's Dr. Valerie Naidu.
Okay, thank you. She was on email this morning. She did send me a message. So I haven't heard anything from Ashton. I don't know if Ashton received the link or not. There was nothing, no communication from Ashton's side.
I'll check with him quickly.
Okay, thanks. So we will just wait, and I see our facilitators in. Good morning, Musidi. Good morning, Musidi and Valerie. Dr. Naidu, I can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you for joining us. We have 7 minutes just to test if audio and videos are good for streaming and for broadcast. Can you just open your video so that we can see if the lighting is good? I think you need to pull it a bit closer to you. Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that is perfect. Thank you so much. So you can close it and then you will open it when you start. When is your time to speak?
And okay, thanks.
Musidi. Morning, Musidi.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Irene.
How are you, Musidi?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. I just wanted to see if your video, the lighting of your video is good for broadcast. So yeah, it's perfect. I think you can close that up and then we'll start at 10.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Irene, Ashton is
Yes,
in the room.
Henry?
He's just joined.
Oh, okay. Let me make him a co-host so that he can also. Good morning, Ashton. Welcome to the webinar.
Good morning. Thank you.
We just have 5 minutes to test if the video and the audio are perfect for streaming.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to see on your side. You are too close.
Too close.
Your face is too close to the screen.
Okay. Is that better?
Still close. It cuts your head.
Okay. I was too high.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Okay.
That one is better. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
You can close it. Thank you so much.
All right.
So all the panelists, all the speakers, please, when it's your turn to speak, please open your video because journalists will be in the session. Some of them will be recording. Some might take it live. So we kindly request that you put your video on when you are speaking. Musidi, I'll just drop you a WhatsApp now in terms of times allocation. I'll drop you a program on WhatsApp and also a comment. Henry told me that there was the times were a bit mixed up on the program, but I'll WhatsApp you now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chal, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I will make you a co-host so that you are able to open your video when it's time for you to speak.
All right.
We will need you to put your video on. If you don't mind, can you open your video now so that we just see how the background looks on your side, the lighting and everything?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying
That's
to
better.
adjust. I'm trying to adjust the setting
Okay.
here. Is that fine?
All right. Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Erin?
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. Charles.
Is the audio okay?
Yeah, the audio is also fine.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Erin?
You can close your video. You'll open it when it's your time to speak.
Sure. Okay.
Yes, Ignatius?
Erin? Yes, I just got a text here. I don't know if our panelists have presentations or maybe notes that will be presenting. I think one of the journalists will be delighted to have access to those notes or that presentation.
Yes, all the panelists that have presentations will give them a right to share the screen. And then after the webinar, we'll just circulate the presentations. So if you can just quickly forward it to me on email, that will be very helpful so that as and when you start speaking, I can just share with the press.
Yeah, I forwarded mine to Henry. I don't have your email. Perhaps if you can forward it to you. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to start the webinar so that all the participants can join. Then at exactly 3 minutes past, Musidi, if we can start the session. Thanks. Let me just open to give them 3 minutes to join in. Okay, I've opened the webinar for the public to join. So let's give them 3 minutes. This session will be live streamed on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So some of the journalists, they would prefer to join on one of those platforms. So just to say that we have shared the streaming links with the media. So some of them may not log into Zoom. Musidi, I think we can start. Others will join, they will catch the session. Musidi, can you hear me?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you are audible now. Thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this particular webinar, which is brought in partnership by the National Press Club as well as GCIS. We are going to be discussing the state of innovation in developing a sustainable water ecosystem in South Africa. To our members of the media, please do make use of the chat box for questions as we go along, and we'll try and get as many questions answered. We will take, or rather have, a question and answer session after all the speakers have spoken. So if you can be patient with us, and I believe some of the presentations as well will be made available to you through the GCIS. So welcome to all our speakers in particular, and I hope that we'll use this session to enlighten the public on the issues pertaining to the water ecosystem. On that note, I would like to then give this opportunity to Leonard, who will then kickstart the discussion for us. Leonard, over to you, sir.
Sorry, I think I go first from, I'm Henry Roman from the Department of Science and Innovation, just to do a quick opening remark from the department side. So welcome everyone. I'm just quickly going to set the scene for the discussion that will ensue shortly. So I'm from the Department of Science and Innovation. My name is Henry Roman. I'm Director for Environmental Services and Technologies. So I'm quickly going to tell you about the DSI's involvement in water. So as you see, my title is Water Science, Technology and Innovation. Now, the National Department of Science and Innovation has a vision to increase well-being and prosperity through science, technology, and innovation. With the mission to provide leadership and enabling environment, the resources required for science, tech, and innovation to support the national system for innovation is comprised of, and I start here with the different entities that report into the Ministry Science and Innovation. You can see it's the NRF, CSR, SANZA, National Intellectual Property and Technology Innovation Agency. But it's not only the entities of the DSI that comprise the NSI. You've also got industry and business, all the universities in South Africa, and the different government departments and their entities, like the Water Research Commission and SELGA. We all form and jointly we strive to achieve the vision and the mission SI is looking at. Quickly, the new white paper on science, technology and innovation was approved by Cabinet in March of 2019. And the National Advisory Council for Innovation did a foresighting exercise shortly after the release of the white paper, and circular economy has been identified as one of 9 priorities within the white paper that is now informing the decadal plan that the department is completing. But within that, in the blue text, on the right-hand side, you can see where water fits in. So under a circular economy, as a thrust, you've got how we want to look at ensuring sustainable water, energy, and food security, and water resources is important. So water management, flood risk, extreme weather, water security linked to food security, of course. And then all of this is also impacted by climate change. So it's also looking at biodiversity, conservation, and land use. And I'll show you why I mentioned these in particular shortly. So the problem statement for today is we are about the 30th driest country in the world, essentially a 17% deficit in terms of supply versus demand by 2030. Our annual rainfall is well below the global average, and our strategic water source areas occupy only 10% of the volume of the land mass of the country. 44% of our wastewater treatment works are in a critical condition, and we suffer losses due to non-revenue water that amount to approximately 9.9 billion rand annually. So today's objective is to reflect on the challenges at both a national and a municipal level, to share insights into the innovation ecosystem. And it's also an opportunity to engage with experts to better understand, in particular, our wastewater innovation ecosystem. Briefly, the Water Rdi Roadmap, which is a partnership between ESI and the Water Research Commission, is looking at how do we utilize the national system for innovation more effectively, work towards a water secure. In the middle there's 3 pillars: human capital development, R&D, and innovation. Importance in terms of today's discussion is looking at governance, planning, and management of the supply of water, and that is linked to both your built and ecological infrastructures. Now, what is ecological infrastructure, you may ask? Ecological infrastructure is looking at our ecology. Some people may be familiar with is payment for ecosystem services. Looking at it as infrastructure puts an onus on us to also look at maintenance of that infrastructure. So here, this diagram from WWF is a nice illustration of how ecological infrastructure contributes to water quality and quantity. So you can see things like clearing of alien vegetation, looking at catchment management, investing in the future. We as a country have a mass job creation program that we renowned for all around the world, how to leverage and better use our ecological infrastructure and protect it. So the interface between the built environment, which we'll be focusing on for today, and our ecology is vital, because what we do in the built space has a very direct impact on what happens in the ecological space, which then also has an impact on the built space. Because if you're a town or city downstream from another town or city, what that town or city then discharges into the rivers and streams has a direct impact on the quality of water that you have downstream from them. So it's very important that the linkage between this and the circular nature of it is respected and known. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to the facilitator and encourage you to ask questions relevant to today's.
Thank you so much, Dr. Henry Roman, and my apologies for getting the order mixed up. Dr. Henry Roman is from the Department of Science and Innovation, and you might have heard in his opening remarks, he alluded to the fact that the Water Research Commission has announced the 5th biennial symposium, which has been taking place from the 20th of September. So it has been taking place this week. And this particular webinar is taking place a day after the symposium. And the whole aim is to take the discussion on water innovation, security, and infrastructure challenges forward. As mentioned earlier, my media colleagues, please feel free to pose your questions in the chat box, and during the question and answer session, we will be able to address some of your questions. And as per norm, the questions during that session, we will happily respond to post this particular webinar. And at this point in time, I'd like to invite Leonardo Manas from the Department of Water and Sanitation, better known as DWS, to deliver the keynote address for this particular webinar. Mr. Manas, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mosiri, for that welcoming as well and allowing me to be part of this webinar. My input into this meeting as far as the situation is concerned with regards to innovation that we need to seek would obviously stem more into the point of the wastewater component in terms of how sanitation is affecting our water resource business. It is all about convenience, I guess, that we are, and there's a price at which everything comes. And so there is also at this point in time where we can actually say that what is to also pose the question in terms of what is the sanitation situation in South Africa as we currently speak. So allow me to start share this presentation to you. Just a few slides that I want to show you as I go along. We have a toilet and we have the environment, but in between there's something happening that is actually affecting the environment, even though our convenience might not always be affected. And the Green Drops certification program is an innovative regulation process that the department has already started with again. And this is to actually ensure that we regulate the processes towards ensuring that we have sanitation services that is actually acceptable to all. But let me go into a little bit into this process and actually, if I can just have a situation where I can get to the next slide. Yes. So what is currently wrong? What is currently wrong is a host of things, but just to make it simplified into this process is that 23%, about 23% of our population or households in South Africa, we don't have access to services that are above RDP levels. And this means that we sit with a situation that people don't have services that are acceptable. There come situations where we also have water supply interruptions. Statistics as we have it at this point in time is that water supply assurance is currently at 65%, way below the 98% that we are supposed to have to ensure that people have water services or water supply for that matter, for all the needs they have. One of those needs would be sanitation. And that is when we are dependent on flush toilets. So if there's a water interruption, it basically cancels the sanitation services automatically as well. There's also an undisclosed amount of spilling that's currently happening, which is also a problem when you don't operate and maintain your municipal services as it's supposed to be. Dr. Roman already mentioned the 44% of wastewater treatment works that were found to be non-functional. I might want to perhaps go into that one a little bit, and with this graph on the right-hand side first. So if we have and discuss this one a little bit, so if we have a situation where 5,258 megaliters per day are flowing into our wastewater treatment works, which have a design capacity of about 6,614 megaliters per day, it should be okay, because that would be less than 80% of our design capacity being used. But then Dr. Roman told us that some of these wastewater treatment works are not functional, right? And then the other situation would also be that if we sit with a scenario that all the wastewater treatment, or rather all the sewage or all the old influent doesn't get to the wastewater treatment or the system, then it would mean that we sit with a situation where the design capacity might be still less if everything actually eventually ends up into the wastewater treatment works as it's supposed to be. But on the left-hand side, we have a graph that tells another story as well, that the majority of the wastewater treatment works we have in country, 31% of them are actually small works, which amounts to only 4% of the hydraulic contribution of the daily flow. Whilst the minority, which is 7% of our wastewater treatment works, are macro, but they contribute almost 70% of the hydraulic contribution in daily flow, which means that centralization of wastewater treatment works might have its benefits, but also the drawback would be if something goes wrong, a lot goes wrong. So there might be, if we look scientifically into this situation, there might be sense into looking at the micro or smaller side of our wastewater treatment works, so to mean that if something goes wrong, it would have a lesser impact, the risk would be much lower. There is a problem that some of our municipalities didn't know the size of the wastewater treatment works at the last time we did the green drop. But I can assure you, as we are speaking here, we have inspectors across the country busy doing audits on for the next green drop, the next green drop report that is currently being looked at as well. There are scientists in the field, and I believe that in the Department of Science and Innovation, there's a lot of scientists who are looking at effluent quality. Their concern when they look about wastewater or the sanitation situation, they talk about effluent quality, they talk about environmental standards, because that is where their business would be. You have engineers who look at the sewer collector pumps, the infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, and they would design these things to the best of their capability, and they would like to see this in the long term being operated. And our economists, the finance specialists, they look at the capital input and expenditure in that regard as the OPEX input to ensure that there's expenditure and a revenue that could come from that. That is all that stimulates the argument, the conversation when we talk about the sanitation situation in South Africa. Yet ordinary South Africans, all they want is a toilet that works, a toilet that gives them dignity, a toilet that is safe to use, that would look after the health and hygiene, and that is what they want, which is also leading us towards some type of solution in terms of the sanitation situation. The strategic framework for water services, which was released in 2003, it spoke about a sanitation facility that is accessible to the household, that there's sustainable operations, and that there's a safe removal of the human waste. So it spoke about both the structure, the facility, and the service. When we looked at basic sanitation, perhaps a mistake we made was that we looked at the technology alone, and we didn't look at the service that is still required to ensure that the technology remain in an operable state. When we put down the facility, we left it to the household to make that decision or to respond to the needs of the facility that had to keep in an operable state. Now, when we design a wastewater treatment works, the wastewater treatment works is one of the only engineering designs that you will have that is alive. So it requires constant attention, constant operational management, constant maintenance. If you leave a wastewater treatment works to its own device, it will not work after a while, and it will die, and it will be in an operable state, and you will find wastewater coming in, going out because it's not longer treated. Why did we think that leaving a ventilated pit latrine, which is actually an on-site sanitation option, why did we think that it will remain in an operable state if we just leave it on its own? Because it was supposed to be also a treatment works, even though it's an on-site sanitation technology. The Minister of Water and Sanitation asked us the question the other day, can we still speak about improved pit latrine if the situation is that it's not, as it's found to be in certain areas where it's not sustainable no more? Again, perhaps we need to reflect on that and say too much focus perhaps was focused on the rollout of the facility as a technology. and not enough focus was given to the service delivery, the maintenance of the on-site technology, leaving us with the question, is this still an acceptable and sustainable sanitation solution? What is the sustainable sanitation future? It certainly lies in the field of sanitation, as localized sanitation services. The on-site sanitation treatment technology is where we have to put so that we can have less dependence on transfer of sewage to a wastewater treatment works, where there are pump stations that can get damaged or vandalized and being in operable state, and you will have spillages. Or there could be where communities are misusing our sewer sanitation system and cause blockages and also spillages. But it is more localized on-site treatment technology. That is perhaps where the future lies. Send decentralized sanitation systems within perhaps a block of residents to make it within there, and also take the risk away from the environment to a large extent, because we all want a safe environment. Economically viable to create financially self-sustainable systems, because we are treating wastewater systems as if it's a dumping site, yet if there's an economy that can be generated from it, where there's some sustainability financially that can be created by the systems themselves in terms of the byproducts that you can generate from these systems, and actually then generate a revenue or economy around the wastewater business itself. Less water dependent sanitation systems, because at the end of the day, the word that was not included in terms of what a basic sanitation service would be was convenience, though. But we are paying a price because, is it in the 16th century, 17th century, when the United Kingdom have designed the flush toilet? It was designed in a time where there was enough water, perhaps. We are now moving in a time when we don't have enough water. Is it still the option? Is the convenience, the price that we pay for the convenience of flushing a toilet, is it not an expensive one that our future generations might not afford? I had a conversation with my daughter the other day regarding what it actually takes to flush a toilet. She's grade 10 and she was shocked at the fact that we are flushing toilets with clean drinking water. In a time where climate change has pushed us into space, where we have no assurance about water supply, security for the future, is it a convenience? Is convenience still something so important to us that we will pay that price of actually reducing the volume of water that I spoke to you earlier about, more than 5,000 megaliters per day that is being flushed away into systems? Is that really a price that we are willing to pay for convenience? I think those are the type of questions that we have to have to ask ourselves in terms of whether it is value that we can add into for ourselves as we go along, in terms of finding new innovation going into the future to make sanitation really sustainable and acceptable to all of us. So, Chairperson, I think I've used up my time, but I've posed the questions and I'm willing to actually participate as we go into the future, finding solutions as far as the sanitation situation in South Africa is concerned. I thank thee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leonardo Manas. You've certainly gave us something to chew on. And just on that note, I mean, it is common knowledge that South Africa is a water scarce country and that it is among the world's driest region. With this knowledge, are we doing enough to secure our minimal water sources? And South Africa's water source areas occupy 10% of the country, but contribute 50.4% of river flows. 44% of the country's wastewater treatment works are in a critical condition. Each year, 9.9 billion rands of water is lost before reaching consumers. And on that note, I'd like to invite Mr. William Moroka to address us next. A little bit about Mr. William Moroka. He is from the South African Local Government Commission, SALGA, And what he will touch on as well is a reflection on municipal needs to turn around wastewater security and their perspectiveness to engaging with innovation ecosystem initiatives to solve this challenge. Mr. Moroka, over to you, sir.
Great. Good morning to all of you. I hope you can see the presentation, Musidi.
We can, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm William Moroka and I'm with Salga and I'm the head of technology and innovation. And we'll just share with yourselves some thoughts and some interventions that we've put in place. And I wish to start, highlighting what a mandate is, and I will not go into the details about it. And then secondly, and importantly, that part of our mandate as enshrined in the Local Government Municipal Systems Act is to find solutions to problems of local government. And in that regard, we've put together what we call the Integrated Sustainable Water Management Wheel, which links to the SDGs. So all these challenges that Henry, Leonardo, and yourself has highlighted, as Salga, we've put together these 13 work packages. And for today, we'll talk about technology and innovation, and to some extent, the resource recovery. So as a first start, we thought we will highlight to your good selves that whatever that we do as Salga is informed by research. So we don't necessarily shoot from the hip and devise solutions that are not informed by science, technology, and research outcomes. And we were disheartened in the first instance to discover through a research we did with the Water Research Commission that there is these observations that are happening in our municipalities. And perhaps we suspect that some of these difficulties that we're faced with currently are as a result of municipalities employing inappropriate technologies. And in that regard, as Salga, we will be focusing on these 5 key areas that I have highlighted, but importantly that for the purposes of today's discussions, we'll be focusing on number 2, 4, and 5, because we were given a brief to talk about wastewater. And we are putting a lot of interventions in these particular key areas, and the subsequent slides will highlight that. How are we doing that? We're doing it, colleagues, through what we call the integrated tech and innovation platforms, right? So we looked at the challenges, we looked at the interventions areas, and we thought that through these 8 platforms that we've put together with the Water Research Commission, they should be able to assist us to be able to eliminate some of the challenges that we face technologically wise within municipalities, because we think technology can bring a lot of spin-offs. And I will not talk into details on these 8. There are 1 or 2 that I have chosen that are quite relevant for the purposes of this discussion. And then lastly was on the slide, we also wish to indicate that each of these platforms have a value proposition. So there is a proposal for each of those, and I'll take you through to some of them. So I'll talk about the skills, I'll talk about the labs, and I'll talk about the streamliner platforms. These are the three that are relevant for today. And the rest we can talk to them at a later stage. Looking at the streamliner, colleagues, and what we're trying to do here, we're trying to work with partners to ensure that we have technological solutions under one roof through a web-based access, right, of classified proven technologies. Because the observation has been that municipalities are approached left, right, and center by all sorts of innovators claiming that they have these world-class technologies that can solve all their problems. And firstly, and then secondly, that it is our observation as well that municipalities don't apply their minds when employing or evaluating those innovative solutions. And as a result, working with partners at SALGA, we've created this web-based where municipalities can go into this one-stop shop of proven technologies that have been vetted by us and other working with stakeholders in order to ensure that whatever that you employ technologically wise fits in with your characteristics of the municipalities, whether rural or urban. And then secondly, we've also created an online advisory facility that if a municipality have difficulties in understanding that technology, there is then advice that has been given. How are we doing that? We will be doing that through this partnership that we have with DSI, through this viability and validation of innovative solutions for service delivery, where essentially we will be testing proven technologies in the water and wastewater domain. And we're excited that to date we've received over 120 municipalities that have expressed interest to work with us on this program. It's a 3-year program, and we think through this intervention we should be able to change the situation or the dire situation that we face with in the sector. Another important platform, colleagues, and ordinarily we hear a lot of noises about municipalities not having the appropriate skills and capability. And we want to argue differently as SALGA that we do have the capability and the skills. And through this particular platform as well, called the Water Engineer Inspire Program, we are beginning to look at means and ways of integrating all capacity building programs, including pulling, our water engineers, technologists, and scientists under this particular platform to ensure that we do a lot of troubleshooting in supporting municipalities amongst themselves. And we anticipate this program to be up and running early next year. And we are in discussions with EWCETA to fund it going forward. Furthermore, that the youth is quite critical for us, and I did see Ashton as part of it, that we are also exposing our youth at municipalities with international countries that are doing well in the space. And you would know that there was a seminar that was put together by SALGA and JICA, and the members that participated, you see it's the youth of eThekwini, Umgeni, and WISA, and we're quite excited that out of that engagement, it emerged that there must be further work that needs to be done in exchange of knowledge between Japan and South Africa on water management. Equally so, in the wastewater space, we're doing a lot of work, and suffice to indicate these 2 trainings that we are doing in terms of the anaerobic digestion of municipalities' wastewater or wastewater sludge, because we can easily generate electricity through that. And we've been training a number of municipalities in the management of digesters at the wastewater plants, including energy efficiency audits, because we do know that wastewater facilities do consume a lot of energy, and we wanted through this intervention for municipalities to understand it much deeper. finally, is that part of our intervention is also to ensure that at the municipal level, we have scientists and laboratories that are able to measure and test both water quality and effluent discharge. And we're focusing on these 5 key areas, colleagues and members of the media, where we wish to emphasize that laboratories of municipalities going forward needs to reflect these 5 issues. And we have put together a national municipal scientific services forum, and we're quite excited that there is a number of milestones that have been reached towards attaining these 5 intentions that we have set ourselves going forward. We cannot do this work without our partners, and I think today we are quite excited that we engage with yourselves as the media, and perhaps, Mushidi, we probably need to look at a way of how we can have these regular engagements with yourselves so that you are appraised of what is unfolding in the water sector. So I wanted just to indicate some of the work that we're doing with our partners, and one key one is the Green Cape, looking at a survey that we've done where we wanted to have a deeper understanding of the technological needs of municipalities, and evidently municipalities came back to us and say we want to have innovative solutions that looks at smart systems. And I think it's a step in the right direction because it sets an agenda that we need to look at smart cities going forward. We're also doing a lot of work with the Japanese, and we're quite excited that they managed to construct this particular facility, and it uses world-class technological innovation in leak detection and non-revenue water management, because it has been mentioned that we're losing in order about 41% of our water, and through this intervention we anticipate to see major changes in that regard. We do have a forum as well on the tech and innovation that drives and influences the research and the technological innovation that we employ in municipalities. And I will not go into the details about the other value propositions. What are some of the hurdles that we probably need to look into going forward? We are aware that not all municipalities have internal policies that looks at embracing tech and innovation. And we are excited that the City of Cape Town has started this process. They are mastering it and will be taking some of their work into other municipalities. Procurement processes is it's a pain for us because municipalities have been saying, SALGA is well and good that there are these innovative solutions, but unfortunately we can't procure them. And working with WRC and Rainwater, we are looking at a proposal that we wish to pitch to Treasury to look at a different dispensation for innovative solutions. Thirdly is we know that a lot of consulting engineers are doing a lot of work for municipalities in terms of the design of wastewater and water facilities. We've engaged with them and we wanted to ensure that going forward, they embrace innovative ways of treating water, both drinking water and effluent discharge as we move forward, including the issues of funding instruments. So here are the 4 hurdles, colleagues, that we're trying to work with our partners, and we're hoping that we will be making progress in addressing them in the foreseeable future. This is my last slide, facilitator. So what we also want to do as SALGA to measure whether we are coming or going on technological innovation in municipalities. We are busy developing a municipal uptake, technology uptake barometer, and we will be measuring municipalities on a year-to-year basis to gauge if they are employing any innovative solutions. And for us, that is in line with the utilities of the future that the World Bank has characterized as one of the elements that it needs to have technology and innovation as we move forward. So facilitator, that's what we wanted to share with your good selves. And this is at a very high level. If more time permitted, we could have taken you through the 13 work packages in details, but we wish to leave it at that for now. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. William Moroka from SALGA. We really appreciate your time, but also taking us through the information that you've just shared with us. And from our side as the National Press Club, we will certainly take you up on the offer to engage further so that we afford you more opportunity to expand on some of the info you've just shared with us. Colleagues, those who've just joined us, especially from members of the media, do take note that this particular webinar is being broadcast live on the National Press Club's Facebook page, which is National Press Club, but also the footage will be made available through the various YouTube platforms that the GCIS, as well as our partners, the Department of Science and Innovation. I'm aware that we are also broadcasting this particular webinar on their YouTube channel. And next on our program is Valerie Naidu, who is from the Water Research Commission, and she's going to help us unravel how does the South African water innovation ecosystem and its solutions turn wastewater challenges into opportunities. For those who've just joined us, we are still discussing stimulating the South African wastewater innovation ecosystem with a panel of experts from the various departments. We have our partners from the Department of Science and Innovation, the Department of Water and Sanitation, the South African Local Government Association, Water Research Commission, and the Young Water Professionals who are part of this particular webinar. Mayor Valerie Naidu, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see your screen as well. Thank you.
Colleagues, the water and sanitation sector and the innovation profiles are huge. So today I'm not going to spend too much time setting challenges. I'm going to talk more to the opportunities and how we think around innovation in the Water Research Commission, and how, as the partners have said up front, we kind of build this partnership model to try and make our system work, which is the water and sanitation sector. Leonardo spoke to a large extent around some of the issues and posed how we should think about things differently. And I think in some ways, I don't want to spend too much time here, except to say that in addition to the direct challenges, there's the very real challenges around national and global challenges, which is climate. So firstly, I think we must always understand South Africa is always a high-risk climate. It was known for a while. Secondly, when we start looking at climate change, whether it's droughts, floods, or raising temperatures or sea levels, all of which will impact South Africa in some way, and therefore our infrastructure and service delivery. Thirdly, I think it's important to understand that in the last few years, we haven't grown significantly. So the financial base for providing some of these services is diminishing and becoming more complex. Population growth always an issue. And as a consequence of some of these, urbanization, which leads to unplanned zones, which leads to complete complexity around provision of services and infrastructure. I think we must be very realistic in South Africa that in addition to urbanization from the rural to the urban space, there's going to be migration. And that's due to some of the economic and climate related impacts that will come about. Of course, this will raise further issues around water, energy, and food security. How do we provide these services? How do we provide these commodities? And so to some extent, how our communities, cities, villages, how are we building them to be more resilient in that space? So you'll see a graph here around rural urban societies. I think it's very important to understand that not only in the context of movement, but in the type of infrastructure that we need to provide, and that we need to think a little bit more differently around that. So to some extent, we're at that space where we have to think and rethink water and sanitation. We have to be not only innovative around the technology choices, we have to be innovative around our approaches and processes. So I've listed some of the things that I think will take paradigm shifts in terms of how, if we're setting these targets, whether it's SDGs or whether we're setting targets of full access as per the Constitution and legislation, we need to take a relook around our planning paradigm, life cycle, costing, budgeting. Where do we put pots of money in? And how do we reallocate that in the future? We'll have to rethink our workforce paradigm. So is all services to be delivered by the public sector? Or do we work on delivering our supply chains, not only in terms of looking at private sector coming in to do certain parts of the business, but how do you bring in communities to also bring resilience into those systems? Infrastructure paradigm. Diana spoke about centralized. So centralized requires a sort of an engineering space, but I think we need to think more around modular. And here the WRC is thinking very innovatively, not just in terms of saying, here's a modular system, but how can modular lead to manufacturing businesses? How can modular lead to service-oriented businesses? How can modular almost decentralize service to the local level? And there's various other paradigms there. I'm not going to go through all of them, except to say, to some extent, we must look at the partnerships paradigm to build resilience, and we must look at the community paradigm. And yeah, I think often you hear globally people speak about how do we democratize engineering and science so that people and communities and villages can become far more resilient as there will be an onslaught of floods, maybe droughts, there will be shocks, not just every 50 years or 100 years, but maybe every 5 years, every 10 years. Now, in a normal system, it's difficult to respond. We will normally respond in terms of provision of more money from the fiscus or insurance. But can you imagine low income and poorer communities that they will be unable to deal with some of these shocks and effects? And so when we're talking about services, we need to think a little bit more differently around that. So within the WRC, when we think differently, we think, how do we shift? Because these are big societal issues. Poverty. Why is poverty important for the water sector? Because poverty for the water sector is all linked to the sustainability of managing the water sector. Inequality. Water can be a great provider in terms of how do we shift from inequality to providing growth for people. Unemployment. How do we move competitiveness and bring new and exciting businesses, not only to provide services for South Africa, but to export to the world so that those businesses can grow and those jobs can become far more sustainable. And so how do we think differently? How do we be bold? How can we make stuff? How can we bet small, test, and scale up? And how do we move fast in that space? In the space of innovation at the moment, colleagues spoke a lot about water quality and different tools. And in the innovation space, it's a really exciting space at the moment. Digital twins, for example, how do you take operations and maintenance, put it onto apps, be able to train people, be able to do operations more easily? We're working with all of these kind of tools. Groundwater is going to become far more important in South Africa in the future. So we've almost used all of our surface water. I don't think there's space for too many dams left. So groundwater becomes important, but how do you manage that groundwater system effectively? So we're looking at machine learning tools around how do you increase the accuracy of borehole drilling in the country. And there's a range of other things linked to water quality, linked to water efficiency in agriculture, and linked to non-revenue water, and also linked to behavior change, which is going to become critical in the future. When we think around infrastructure and supply, in the space that we're thinking around innovations, we think about inclusivity and resilience. And so while, if you look at the center graphic here, we spend a lot of time looking at what is the full water mix? Can we use groundwater? Can we use reuse? What are the technologies for reclamation? How is desalination going to be brought in? How do we actually do this sustainably and affordably for the country? You also have to think on either side. You have to think about the ecological infrastructure, Because if we pay attention there, we will do a lot to protect our systems, our very limited scarce water. But then how do you think around communities? How do you think about communities around supply so that you can build jobs and support livelihoods, that it'll be built at a far more, we will build far more resilience in this community. And here, there's a lovely video that came through the symposium on the MUS system that basically looked at communities and said, how do we work with these communities, test these models and build these models and build and integrate it around water, energy, food. How do communities become part of, from just providing food for themselves to now providing food in local gardens, in local sort of markets, and that allows them to get some income back. So these are exciting spaces. I also want to share with you how the WRC is looking at not just this high-tech innovation all the time, not just in terms of highly qualified, technical professionals, but grassroots innovators can actually play a role. This company walked through, the guy that walked through, immediately I could tell that he was an entrepreneur, just in the way he put his proposal forward. It was not about subsidies and grants or anything. It was about enabling. It was about a partnership. And this guy spoke, and if you can see these toilets where we've rolled out a couple of toilets now as demos, he spoke about vandalism in schools. He spoke about integrating water efficiency, like if you use water to wash your hands for hygiene, how can we use that to flush or clean the toilets so there's less smell, so kids have a better experience in those schools. We've tested all of those things. And I think for me, what was interesting about this is it was such a great partnership between a local, a grassroots innovator, the schools themselves, ourselves as enablers in the system, the tech accelerators called WADA and SASTEP that was able to provide funding, but also technical guidance around how to do these sorts of innovations better so that his company can grow going forward. But the last information that was given, he's now able to put his products in some of the building warehousing supply chains. So for us, it's a great success story there. In terms of sanitation, to be honest, when we looked at sanitation, research kept coming out in terms of pollution, health effects, in terms of bad infrastructure. And we kept asking the question, is this the future for South Africa? Is this it? So do we only have these two options between VIP, which is really badly implemented, and then basically flush toilet? Can we think different? Can we aspire better for South Africans? Can we provide an environment for our kids that actually doesn't mean that we actually have to have poor toilets and sanitation systems? So we created the shift to modular. We created a shift to more standards-based approach. We started to think about not only how do we test these solutions, but how do we get businesses involved to actually understand how to do these modular systems? And then how do we actually say there are more sustainable jobs in the system and drive circular economy concepts? So you'll see that basically this launch occurred last year. That system is still running now 1 year later. We'll be doing some new launches on Toilet Day in November. But this system is fully recyclable. In other words, the moment you top it up once, you don't have to top it up again. And we've been monitoring the performance and the water quality issues just to see how this is going. In terms of how the kids have responded to it, in terms of how the principal has responded to it, it's been really, really positive. So here, we're not just talking sometimes, the sanitation paradigm is about the front end. How do we get more water efficient toilets? It's about the back end. So how do we put systems in play that has a good design that is able to take the back end products, either recycle water, take the sludge and valorize the sludge. So how do we take that sludge and convert it to biochar, to fertilizers, to any sort of energy product, etc. So we're testing a whole lot of technologies in the space, but the real aspiration, in my opinion, if I had to set a future trajectory, how do I completely disrupt the centralized pipes, pumps, centralized wastewater treatment plant system? And here is an example of where we're working towards. What we're looking at is these kind of units that could be placed at each house. It will be as simple as an aircon unit that we currently buy off the shelves. And then how do we bring down affordability? Because our primary aim here is not just to provide to the affluent, but for sanitation for all. So how do we bring the affordability through volumes and scale up and manufacturing scale up that allows it to be accessible the same way a phone is accessible at the moment? So yeah, just looking at the program, it's big, it's bold, it's ambitious. We've got 26 technologies in the space. We've got 5 licensing agreements. We currently localized 3 technologies. In other words, we're now driving manufacturing bases in South Africa around that tech. We've leveraged 104 million in investment, DSI as a partner, Bill and Melinda Gates as a partner, and various other in-kind support partners in the program. We've leveraged a further 18 million to build sanitation, sort of embedding the knowledge, the skills, the standards, the training through UKZN into the space. And we've spoken with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we've said, look, the modular system in South Africa is not a commercial base yet. So it's new and it's different. So we actually need an enabling platform. And they're prepared to put together with a partnership with DTIC, a further 40 million to actually see how do we get the industrialization components right. So we're not just moving sanitation now, we're also moving South Africa in the manufacturing space to a different space, to these new advanced systems, but building the skills while we're doing at it. We're driving a water efficient toilet program, which will be launched shortly. And we're basically driving the standard certification program on these toilets. As part of the SAFE program for the presidency, we're basically going to put 10 technologies in so that they can see how it works, start to trust the system. While we're working with the businesses, we're also asking them to put a janitor in to test the O&M, to give us CapEx and OpEx, because we really want to disrupt the current thinking in the way we do sanitation in the country. And we're saying, if you think boldly enough, we can actually get certain things achieved. So in this space, I think there's exciting opportunities. And I think within the WRC, we're very excited with the partners. But when we deal with innovation, we're also looking at how do we empower and be more inclusive. So things like hackathons, which bring students which are in different disciplines and say, what can you offer in terms of changes? They bring their own life experiences into the type of innovations they developing. It's not always this elite kind of thinking. Sometimes something quite simple can be quite tangible and make quite a big difference on the ground. So we will continue to do this as the Water Research Commission. We look at citizen science. We've developed many SaaS tools. What's really nice about it, it's 15 years of investment there. We've been able to take citizens to the ground, school kids to the ground. They do, using these tools, they're able to look at the water quality. And I think we're happy to announce that this is now grown into a global practice. So there's a website which shows kind of citizen science globally using these kind of tools. So really exciting stuff in the innovation space. For information, we'll share obviously the presentation, but the WADA portfolio at the moment has got a nice, strong portfolio of 46 demos. And essentially we've helped these innovators with 46 independent tech evaluations so they can develop their products even better. And then while we're doing that within the WADA program, as William has said as well, we're also starting to look at municipalities and how we influence the young engineers so that they think that there are possibilities, there are options there that are different to the current way in which we think around it. So with that, colleagues, I thank you. Obviously, there's a lot more in the innovation portfolio, but I hope I've shared some of the exciting stuff that is being done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neva Naidu, for that insight. And it's also interesting to note the various programs that you have deployed within the portfolio, touching on the youth in particular. And on that note, I'd like to invite Mr. Ashton Mpofu, who is from he is from the Young Water Professional South Africa. He will speak to us about accessing the water sector value chain. Ashton, over to you and good morning.
Good morning, my chair, and thank you very much for the kind introductions. I must begin by thanking the organizers of the event for really expressing and inviting young people to be part and parcel of this discussion. It is indeed a pleasure to be invited to sit in the table as a young person and share our views to what we think about how can we stimulate innovation in the wastewater sector in South Africa. Maybe to begin with, I mean, I've been listening and I think that a lot has been said, and one tends to wonder as a young person, where are we going wrong? Because I mean, from the presentations that have gone through, I mean, we seem to be doing so well, and yet we still sit with a number of problems as a sector, as the water sector in South Africa. So I have been listening and proudly to say that all the stakeholders need to engage young water professionals and we are working together in this space. So maybe to begin with, I'm still trying to find a departure point because a lot has been said. Allow me to tap into wisdom of our elders. This is the stance that they've always tried to take whenever I engage in such webinars. Let me quote our former statesman, Nelson Mandela. He says, open quote, massive poverty and obscene inequality are such terrible scourges of our times in which the world boasts breathtaking advances in science, technology, industry, and wealth accumulation, that they have to rank alongside slavery and apartheid as social evils, close quote. So this is the quote that I've carried with myself ever since I took over as the chair of the South African Water Professionals, because the question is, we have the innovation, we have got the technology, we have got everything that we need, as has been presented by the other panelists, but still, we still sit with massive poverty and obscene inequality. And we still sit with a number of our population still without access to water and sanitation. So the biggest question is, where are we going wrong? Because we have seen that in terms of, demonstration of our innovation, generating innovation, applying it, demonstrating it, and all sorts of things, they are being done. And we have seen that there are lots of stakeholders in the space that are trying their level best to ensure that we as a country, we innovate. But my biggest worry as a young person is, why is it then that we're still sitting and we have a huge number of problems as a country, yet we are doing so much and yet we're generating so much innovation? If you look into the number of patents, look into our publications in the water space, we're doing so well. I think we rank in the top 20 in the world in terms of water innovation. But yet still, our people are still living in poverty without access to water and sanitation. So the biggest of the questions is, where are we going wrong? So I'll try to unpack that particular side of things, as a young person. I think, firstly, I would like to say that we need to move away from viewing wastewater as waste. We have defined wastewater as, it's not even something that we are willing to engage ourselves with. We defined it as waste. Everybody has got the notion that wastewater, it only deserves to be disposed of. And then this is where Valeria has come in to express that, we need to think around the circular economy. We need to look at wastewater as a resource. We need to go back to the basics, because nature has always regenerated itself. But the only problem is that we are now generating a lot of waste in a fast rate than what nature can take and than what nature can treat and bring it back into a state that we can reuse. But we need to then step in as well as human beings, use our innovation and help nature, to fast track the treatment and the reconversion of that waste into a product that can be reused. So one of the gentlemen that I engaged a few weeks ago, when we're talking about innovation in the water space in Mpumalanga, referred to the fact that we need to make wastewater sexy. We need to make it sexy in such a way that it's attractive, to stakeholders and attractive to our population. So now I'm moving on to speak about, that we need to have more increased collaboration amongst the stakeholders. the Water Research Commission is doing its lot, is doing a lot of work in the technology residence level, maybe 1 to 5. We generate, research. We also demonstrate through the WEDA program. We have got SASTEP that is doing amazing work, and we have the SALGA coming in as well with very good and innovative, platforms now, for demonstration, for bringing other stakeholders on board, engaging municipalities and so forth. So there's lots of things that are happening in this space, but my only biggest problem is that we need more of stakeholders that will ensure that there's adoption. So the likes of the Green Cap that Mr. Morat has referred to, that their work is to promote the large scale uptake of such technology. We need more of such entities, because I feel like we have created a lot of stakeholders, around us, but we are not scoring. We're not doing the right thing that we're supposed to be doing. We need to see these technologies being adopted somewhere, somehow, and we need to see them working for our population, because the biggest of the reasons of innovating and generating knowledge and technology and so forth is to ensure that we advance our wealth and we ensure that we serve the population. So if innovation is there and it's not doing its work, then we are as good as we do nothing. So we seem to be passing the ball around us a lot, and without coordination, and we're failing the last step, which is to score goals. And the last step is to ensure that there is a large-scale adoption of these technologies. And you want to see them in use, and you want to see them serving our country and serving our people. So this is where the biggest of the problem is. So if you look at technology readiness level 7 to 9, this is where we must put more of our work to say, how do you promote, the large-scale uptake of these technologies? This is where we are missing the point. All these non-soil sanitation systems that we see that from SASTEP that have been tested, that are being spoken of, how is it that they're not being adopted at a faster rate? So one of the things that we should also try to do is that we embrace circular economy and we engage our private sector as well. Let's invite them. We know that, of course, the municipal sector is more of the biggest market for this innovation or these technologies, but you also have the private sector as well. So I always ask the question that if our mines and all these other industries, they always have big monies for CSI, but at the same time, we point a finger at them and say they're the ones that are polluting our resources. So how come they're not investing in bringing in technology that can ensure that they treat their wastewater and they dispose water that is of good quality so that someone down the line can use that water? Dr. Robin has referred to the payment for ecosystem services. This is a way of trying to ensure that the upstream users, the downstream, they pay the upstream users so that they do the right thing and not to pollute the environment. But the thing is, all this being done, why do we need to pay certain stakeholders? Why do we need to engage and to step in and do things? We need to find ways of promoting the large-scale uptake of technologies. So one of the other things as well is that we need native and adaptable solutions. Mr. Mana spoke about this, that the flushing system does not belong in our ecosystem. It came with the colonizers into Africa. So we need to go back to the basics, and we need to be honest to ourselves that some of the technologies that we are receiving, that we seem to be embracing, they're not working for our ecosystem. And talking about that, we need inclusivity as well, as Dr. Valeria has just alluded to. We need to engage our people, because looking at non-SWAT sanitation system, one of the biggest barriers is the fact that our people, they're not buying into it, because being in something that is not flashy is more or less not sexy or not technological enough. People want to flash. So we need to go back to the basics, and try and do what we call co-creation or co-design. Work with the communities, educate them about why we are introducing such technologies, find out if they're interested in these technologies or not. It's pointless to have scientists sitting together, speaking, designing things, coming up with technologies without relooking at the market. Is the market ready for such technologies? Or we are just forcing the candy down their throats because they don't want it, they also want to flash. So we need to do our homework, to go down to the communities, start co-creating, start co-designing, so that when we say we are implementing this technology, they'll be fully embraced and people love them. And then the other one as well is the issue of affordability or the business case. Private sector will tell you that water is too cheap in South Africa, which is the biggest problem as well, because we need technologies that will have a good business case. And this also transfers directly into the procurement system. Some of our technologies, they've got a very long payback period. So if you look at the PMFA, the MFMA, it doesn't allow, for municipalities to engage in long-term contracts with certain stakeholders of the private sector, obviously for good reasons and to avoid corruption and so forth. But we need to go back and check, how can we promote, the involvement of the private sector doing business with municipalities and the municipalities adopting their technologies and with a good business case or affordability. I'm not for, making water expensive. I know there's talks about bringing in the independent regulator, but we need to find ways of ensuring that the coordination, the collaboration that I spoke of earlier on is really at a good level and a good note, so that these stakeholders work together and the private sector or the innovators, they also see a business case, or they also make profits from their innovation. So I don't know how we should do that, but that's one thing that we need to do. So we need to revisit our legislation as well, because currently we seem to be having legislation that supports a linear economy, whereby industry is concerned about meeting discharge standard. It's not concerned about doing the right thing, or reusing water. So we need not to make the legislation to be punitive or punish people, because some people prefer that, industry says, no, we know that we'll never meet discharge standards, but we're just gonna pay fines. We'll use the calculator based on COD, we're just gonna pay the fine. But now, continuing in that trajectory is not good enough, because we'll always have our ecological infrastructure being destroyed or poor or quality water just because of certain stakeholders, private sector, industries, mines, I'm talking about farmers and so forth. They are the ones that are discharging water that is not of good quality. Talk about municipalities as well. They are also culprits, because we've had municipalities, that are dysfunctional. 11% of them are not working, 56% are in critical conditions. They are the ones that are discharging wastewater that's not of good quality. So we need to find ways of bringing the private sector that can use that wastewater and convert it into a standard that can be reused somewhere. So in the private sector, we can talk about eco-industrial parks. We need to promote these economic zones, that we have developed at the government. We need to ensure that whatever water is being generated by one industry, we promote what you call fit for purpose reuse. Someone else must take it and use it. So we are talking about making wastewater sexy. And by doing so, we have got the technologies that can treat that water into a standard that can be used by the next stakeholder or the next industry. So we need to do that. Agriculture remains one of the biggest users of water, about 60%. But we know, truth be told, agriculture does not need drinking quality water. So agriculture can use water. Pulp and paper industry also consumes lots of water. It doesn't need drinking quality wastewater. It can use, wastewater. So how do we then promote them? Invest in technologies, that can take wastewater, treat it to a standard that can be used for irrigation or for processing, their product, that is paper or whatsoever it might be. Another one is that we need incentives. We need to promote, incentives in terms of if someone invests in technologies for treating wastewater, we need to find ways of promoting this adoption through incentives. I know the TTIC has done something along those lines in terms of infrastructure grant. We need to do more and promote the private sector in terms of adopting these technologies. And then the other one that I wanted to speak about is the issue of lack of technical capacity. If you speak to innovators, they will always tell you that there is a lack of technical capacity within the municipalities. But my argument about that is that we have got lots of young people, that have gone to universities, they have got the knowledge, they just need mentorship, and they just need their skills to be crafted so that they will be able to contribute in running these technologies in these municipalities or industries. So we need to revisit that as well and ensure that we have got enough skill to man and to run these technologies. So what I'm speaking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we need a greater enabling environment. we have the innovation. I don't think there's a need for us to say that we're not innovating enough. We are innovating enough as a country. But the biggest of the worries that we have is how do we ensure that technologies are adopted within our ecosystem? And by doing so, we'll craft a culture of innovating even more. And lastly, we should not think that innovation must always work for South Africa. We need our water sector or the PTIC to start exporting our innovations to other countries. This has happened in the past because some of these can't be adopted well enough in time in South Africa, but let's find ways of exporting our technology into other countries. This is how we can learn that it's working well. They can be demonstrated in other countries, they can be adopted, they can work, and we can make money through that. Let's patent our technologies, and have our own Silicon Valley in South Africa, whereby we generate innovation and we keep it, we sell it, we export it, whatever case that it might be. But we need to get to that point of saying we should not expect that all technology that is generated or innovation that we generate is going to be used within our ecosystem. Let's allow African countries to tap into our knowledge. We're already serving the African continent through various platforms, Water Research Commission, all the work that we generate. They read our papers, they read our reports, they engage with us a lot of times. We go to the IWA, we engage them in many platforms. But let's now look into a system of using the DSI. Let's go ahead and patent and let's export through DTIC. Lastly, let's look at the SABS standard as well, because one of the things is that there is public versus private, right? The municipalities have got a mandate and they've got that constitutional right of supplying services to our people. But at the same time, they're not doing this, at the greatest of their abilities. That should be, the truth should be told. So we need to move away, of giving them all the honors and all the burden, on top of their shoulder to say, it's your responsibility to service our people. We need to culture and open, to allow private players, private sector that is innovators to come in, use their technology to service our people, and then the case of the business case of affordability comes in, but we need to culture that environment whereby non-SWAT sanitation system can come in and service the whole city, without the municipality being involved. That's your decentralized or on-site systems. For them to come in, we need to start those discussions between the public sector and the private sector. Allow the private sector to come in, allow the private sector to have a piece or to a share, then things will work. But this should be governed, because we know that if we don't govern it, then at the end of the day, things will fall through the windows, but we need to govern. So SAPS should come in. Let's look at standardizing. Let's look at our ISOs, our SANs, and so forth. So ensure that each and every equipment, each and every technology that has been manufactured or that is available, it does adhere to certain standards by SAPS. And the local content as well is very important to promote innovation and adoption. We need to protect our local innovation. We need municipalities to procure our local innovation. We need them to see the innovation being adopted, and we need to see them actually getting money or profits from the technology that has been generated. And the government has got the capacity as well, that through the investments that it makes in innovation and so forth, we can actually come up with our own state-owned entities. Maybe I know that this is something that not everybody will help about, because we seem to be failing to run the legal ones that we have. But we can just have that public-private partnership whereby some of the innovation comes from government money, because we are sponsoring universities, we are sponsoring all Water Research Commission, other entities to generate innovation. And if that is patented, the government can actually have a percentage, and that money can go back to sponsor even more innovation. I mean, this has been done in other countries where some of the companies that are existing, that are innovative, are owned actually by the government, or the government has got a certain percentage share in those entities. So, ladies and gentlemen, my mantra to my contributions to this platform is that we need to find ways of promoting adoption of our innovation. We have got enough innovation. The only thing that we need to see is our innovation working for us, and our innovation working for our people, our innovation contributing into building our economy, creating jobs for young people, and ensuring that South Africa achieves the SDG goals in 2030. Thank you very much, Program Director. I think I will end there.
Thank you so much, Ashton, for what you've just said, what you've just shared with us. As I've mentioned, Ashton Bofu represents the young water professionals of South Africa, who are mostly under 35. I have seen that some of our speakers have already started responding to the questions that came through the chat box. And I'm sure as well, or I have been assured rather, that we will be able to share some of the presentations that we presented during this session. We are aware of the limitations in terms of time, especially for this particular webinar. So without repeating the 2 questions that have been responded to, there are other questions that came through our other platforms with the National Press Club. And the other question that came through is directed to Salga. And the question says, not only is water scarce, but expensive in these times, what interventions are in place to mitigate this, especially at a municipal level? I'd like Mr. William Moroka to perhaps respond to that particular question and guide us in terms of what interventions are available at local municipalities, and follow on to that question, which I presume you would want to also touch on, is the Hammanskraal situation, the quality of water. Question is, what could be the root cause, and do municipalities have the capabilities to address such problems? I'll hand over to Mr. William Moroka from Salga to help us respond to the 2 questions.
No, thanks for those 2 questions. And on the first one, 2 issues there. In the first instance, the poor are protected by the fiscal instruments like the equitable share and the municipal infrastructure grant to ensure that municipalities do provide free basic water to the indigents. So that's the first part. And the second part is that, contrary to what people are saying, in actual fact, we're finding that water is quite cheap in this country. We are not even charging cost-reflective tariffs, right? And in that regard, people might say it's expensive, but that is not the case. And the intervention that are there is to look at rooting out inefficiencies in municipalities, because we know that in some instances we are not providing this service at the efficiently so. And in that regard, we are working with our partners looking at modules such as the cost of providing services and the subsidy instruments, if they are sufficient or not. On the Hammanskraal one, it is a bit of a difficult one, colleagues, because our information at Salga is that Tshwane municipality is dealing with that particular impasse, and there has been numerous reports that have been put together, and that indicates that the quality of water, it's not good there. I'm not privy to the details of what are some of the root causes. Suffice to say that the reports have indicated that the municipality is not complying to the drinking water standards in terms of sense for 2.1. But I can get more details from the City of Tshwane and then provide further details to whoever that asked the question. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. William Moroka. And there's a request that came through as well from one of our members at the National Press Club that they were actually posing it to the National Press Club, but I thought it's something worth sharing with our speakers here today. The person is suggesting that perhaps we need a bigger platform beyond just this webinar to expand a bit on this particular topic, but also to give the speakers an opportunity to also engage with members on the media so that they could ask further questions on some of the information you've just said. We are aware that some members of the media are attending other press briefings. It is a busy news day today. So I'm going to leave it here for now because I'm also aware that we are slightly running out of time. And I would like to then bring in the General Manager of the National Press Club, Mr. Josh Chale, to give his closing remarks rather.
Thank you, Musidi, for so eloquently running the program this morning. We have been dealing with an issue that is central to so many South Africans, whether in the rural areas or the more developed areas. The issue of water is one that is on our minds, and it is good that we are not waiting until the zero moment comes. And it's good to hear that there are various efforts, collaborations that are under consideration at the moment and that are being undertaken by various entities to mitigate this problem. I think that, as we have just said, Musidi, what we need to do as the media and perhaps specifically as the National Press Club is to continue to make our platform available for stakeholders to can use our platform to reach as many South Africans as is possible, because it appears like the thinking out there is that nothing is being done, whereas clearly from this webinar this morning, it is clear that something is actually being done, but perhaps we in the media need to play our role as well to bring it forth to the nation to say what exactly is being done. So I would like to thank all of those who have taken part in this collaboration, notably the GCIS and the two departments that were involved, Science and Technology and the Department of Water and Sanitation. And of course, the National Press Club for agreeing to make our platform available for this. Our friends from SALGA and the young professionals in the water space, as well as the most importantly, the Water Commission, because of the research work that they are doing in this field. So colleagues, I think collaboration is going to have to be the way forward. And I imagine that before that day comes that we completely run out of water, systems would have been put in place to mitigate for this apparent impending disaster. So let me thank you all for making yourselves available, all the speakers, all the participants, the questions and the comments that were forthcoming. I really would like to thank you for that. And on this note, I think we will end this webinar. And may I wish you a further present day and good work for the future. Thank you so much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you and take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.